It's not just that Lazarus is saying, yeah, I believe in Jesus. Lazarus is saying, yes, I believe firmly in Jesus, and you should too. See the difference? Lazarus got in the habit of telling his story because Lazarus not only had a story to tell, he had a passion to tell it. Find the kind of the focal point of the guy in John chapter 11 is a guy named Lazarus. Now, Lazarus was one of Jesus' really, really good friends. And Lazarus had two sisters, Mary and Martha. And there were times Lazarus and Mary and Martha lived in a village called Bethany that was a couple miles outside of the big capital city of Jerusalem. And so there were multiple times when Jesus would come, and instead of trying to find somewhere to stay in Jerusalem, he would stay at the home of Lazarus and Martha and Mary. And so besides just, them being disciples and being believers in Jesus, they were good friends. They had kind of a closer connection maybe than even some of the other disciples. And Lazarus, Jesus is somewhere preaching, and Lazarus gets sick. And the sisters send messengers to Jesus to tell him, hey, your friend Lazarus is sick. He's near death. We need you to come. And this is later on in Jesus' ministry. He's been performing miracles and teaching for a while. This is really getting not too far away from when he goes to the cross. And so they know Jesus has power. Jesus can heal. Jesus can save. Please come to Bethany. Please come heal your friend Lazarus. And Jesus doesn't leave immediately to go help his friend. And while he hesitates, while he pauses, Lazarus ends up dying. And then Jesus shows up in the city of Bethany. And Lazarus is dead. And it's not just that he just died, he's been dead. He's been buried. He's been placed in a tomb. And tombs back in ancient times in this part of the world, it wasn't bury him in the ground. Sometimes you did, but a lot of times with these tombs, it was kind of a cave or a hole dug into the side of a hillside. And it might be one person that's in there. It might be an entire family. It might be even, depending on how wealthy you were, it might be even you're buried in there with total strangers. It was a room that you would walk in. There would be the remains of this person here and this person here. And there might be even shelves and stuff with different, the remains of different people in there. And Lazarus has been in this tomb. And by the time Jesus shows up, Lazarus has been in this tomb for 4 days. And Jesus comes to visit with Martha and Mary. And as soon as Martha sees Jesus, she tells him, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. So she's upset. But at the same time, she's like, but I still believe, I still know there's something good that can come from this. Jesus has this powerful conversation with her that we're not going to spend time on today about how he is the resurrection. He is the life. He goes to see her sister Mary. Mary says the same thing. If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. There's this wrestling, this fight that they're having, this internal battle that these two sisters are having with their faith and with reality. We believe in you, Jesus. We believe that you have power. We believe that you can do amazing things that we can't even explain. But you didn't. You can, but you didn't. We don't understand why. Jesus says, let's go to the graveyard. Let's go to the cemetery. And they get there and they get to the tomb. And Jesus takes a minute here to kind of sit in the grief with Martha and Mary and the other friends and family that have gathered. There's lots of people that are gathered around, and Jesus weeps with them. It is a sad occasion, and he spends some time in that misery, in that grief with them. But then he does something that nobody expected. He starts talking to Lazarus. In John chapter 11, beginning verse 43, it says, when he said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And I wonder even if in that moment there were some people that are like, okay, that's kind of weird. He's talking to a dead guy. He's talking to a tomb. But when he calls for Lazarus, after they've rolled the stone away, and he calls for Lazarus, it says, the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Set him free. Can you imagine? Can you fathom what that would have looked like? I mean, we can see, movies and videos and kind of, artistic depictions of that. But imagine standing there live and in person, Jesus calling in. This tomb has been opened, but it's just darkness and death straight in front of him. And he calls into the darkness and he calls into death and he says, Lazarus, come out. I'm setting you free. And I don't know if it took a few seconds or if it took a minute. I don't know how long exactly it took, but this man wrapped up in cloth, almost like a mummy or something, comes stumbling out of the tomb. Can you fathom that? How amazing would that have been? I mean, think again about some of the most amazing things that you have experienced in your life that you couldn't wait to tell other people about. Wouldn't this be one of them? Dude, I was there. I saw it was. I can't even explain it. I mean, Jesus said, "Lazarus come out." And Lazarus came out, and I mean, just how do you even describe that to other people? And they watched it happen. And it wasn't. I mean, maybe even the more amazing thing about this is this isn't the first time that Jesus has raised somebody from the dead. Jesus had raised a little girl from the dead, but she had only been dead for a short amount of time, maybe a few hours. That was amazing. Jesus raised the only son of a widow. She had lost her only son. And they were carrying the body to the cemetery. And Jesus raised him from the dead. But Lazarus has been dead for how long? 4 days. This isn't like, well, maybe he was just sleeping. Maybe he was napping really hard. There's no doubt he has died. He has been dead. He has been buried for a while. And Jesus brought life out of death. Jesus rescued Lazarus from the grave. And it is, you can just imagine tears of pain now to turn to tears of joy. Wailing turns into cheering. Mourning becomes celebration. It's this amazing thing that everybody got to watch. And you can just imagine people are cheering and hugging and laughing and crying and still trying to figure it all out. But there's a group of people that aren't happy. The church leaders are upset. They see Jesus perform this miracle, and these priests and these rabbis who Jesus has consistently had confrontation with are upset. Can you imagine that? A guy that's been dead has been brought back to life, and they're upset about it. And they're not upset, at least this time, at Jesus because he's blasphemed in some way, talked about God in a way that they don't like. I mean, that's happened before, but that's not what's happening here. And they're not upset because he brought Lazarus forth on the Sabbath day, which is a holy day where you're not supposed to do any work. And Jesus has done some miracles on the Sabbath day before, and that's been an issue. But that's not what's happening here. But because people were choosing to follow Jesus, when people saw that dead man walk out of that tomb, they immediately began saying, I'm following that Messiah. I'm following that rabbi from now on. And that drove Jesus' enemies crazy. Jesus has rescued someone from death and brought them to life. And these guys' reaction is, we got to kill him. We're not going to bother arresting him. We tried that before. That didn't work. We're not going to bother arguing with him because he keeps refuting our arguments and proving us wrong. That's not going to work. Let's just kill him. Jesus' life is being threatened because he raised a dead man from the grave. We can't have this, and we can't have these people going over to Jesus. And all of that is, there's so much there to talk about, but that's really not what I want to focus on today. The part of the story that I want us to pay attention to is this right here. I want us to focus on Lazarus. That's who we're talking about, right? And his before and after story. Now, it would seem really simple, right? To look at Lazarus' before and after story. Before, he was dead. After, he's alive. I mean, and we're done. Thanks, Marshall, for talking to us today. We're ready to go. We're not ready to go yet, by the way, so just sit still for a minute. It's not about the miracle itself. We talked about that last week with Naaman. Naaman was inflicted with leprosy. Naaman became fully cleansed. But we didn't want to focus totally on the physical healing that took place, because there's a transformation that took place in Naaman that we talked about last week. And we see the same thing in Lazarus as well. Lazarus was dead. Lazarus is now alive. That's an amazing before and after story. I mean, Lazarus can kind of, anybody else who wants to compare before and after stories, Lazarus got one that hardly anybody else can beat, right? But it's not about him being physically raised from the dead that I want us to focus on this morning. There's something that changed in Lazarus besides having life, having air pumped back into his lungs again. There's something different about him when he comes out of the grave. There's something that he was that is different now because of what he experienced. And I want you to see it in the next chapter, in John chapter 12. So if you still got your Bibles there, we were in chapter 11. Look at John chapter 12. Don't know exactly how much time has passed since Lazarus' resurrection has taken place. But here's what it says in verse 10. So the chief priest made plans to kill Lazarus as well. What? I mean, we're talking about Jesus, right? Jesus has all these followers and is causing problems for these priests and these rabbis, and they want to kill him, and we can kind of make sense of all that. But now they want to kill Lazarus? Why do they want to kill Lazarus? Lazarus was dead, and now he's alive again. Now you want to kill him again? What is going on? That doesn't make sense until you keep reading. So go back there to verse 10. Look at verses 10 and 11. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. And here's why, John says. For on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and putting their faith in him. It wasn't just Jesus and his miracles and his teaching that was drawing people to him. Lazarus was sending people to him. Lazarus was using his story to say, here's what happened in my life. Here's what Jesus did for me. You should go listen to him. You should go spend some time with him. You should experience having a connection with him. And so many people are being affected by Lazarus telling his story that they're going in droves to Jesus. And these priests and rabbis are like, we got to put a stop to this. Let's kill Lazarus too. Lazarus' life is being threatened because people's belief systems are being altered. Mindsets are shifting and people's lives are being changed. Because Lazarus wouldn't stop talking about it. Because Lazarus had an amazing story. And he kept telling people about it. Here's what Jesus did for me. You heard about this guy, Jesus? I got to tell you about Jesus. And any time that he had the opportunity, I guess, Lazarus was telling his story. And Lazarus was telling what Jesus had done for him. And what I want you to see about the before and after is not that Lazarus didn't have faith before. He did. He believed in Jesus. It's not that Lazarus didn't have a relationship with Jesus before. He did. It's not even that Lazarus didn't help create opportunities for other people to hear about Jesus, because he hosted people in his home to listen to Jesus. But there's a difference. There's a difference when you get to John chapter 12. It's not just that Lazarus is saying, yeah, I believe in Jesus. Lazarus is saying, yes, I believe firmly in Jesus, and you should too. You see the difference? Lazarus got in the habit of telling his story. Because Lazarus not only had a story to tell, he had a passion to tell it.